Hello, Judge Napolitano. If you could hear this, if you can't, someone get Judge Napolitano to hear, please. They have his sense and sensibilities before and after he was with Fox News, with Whiting Forensics. Since I was a kid, more and more. They have collusion /S with people associated with the Wethersfield retired police chiefs and their intimate ties, with use of location /S collusion everywhere the human species body is. Other countries have the same problem /S. This breaching method that came from before modern religious messengers, it had people using confessions to it without them realizing there are proofs. This is more probable. For example, it had everyone blaming other things, others or selves. It got people to blame other things, others or selves for things that it did, specifically to have that reaction. And then to have the people that they had that done to wrongly, relative by the people now involved trying to defend themselves, not knowing how to do it properly. Now they had to be countered. And little by little, more and more, the breaching method humanity's voices at locations, areas, and states as the only ones that could operate the phenomenon of the names of countries, of them forcing to more and more incapable of defending their syntax, the syntactic nature, their logic, and of affording to be defended, how nature wanted and demonstrates us to speak for the sciences. As experts of them formally or not, the difference of that too, this breaching method employed through an system's tactically ulterior from the one that nature has, where it uses difference to show us its own. We are distinct from the other species' bodies. Each one of them made up a whole bunch of individual bodies, just like humanity's body, of a whole bunch of individual bodies. So we could discern that is not our species body, is not their species body that has us distinct, but non-distinct and simultaneous. While there is a further distinct identity of simultaneous nature, that is not any of these volumes in our own, nor our own species volume science, but it is all things anyway. Any vaccines. Ron Adams, Judge Napolitano, he's in the comments right now. They don't put the comments back up after. But he brought your name into it. And some police with Connecticut police departments. They have been switching names also with courts, with people associated with Ron Adams. Ron Adams said he was at a wedding with you. And there's a Joe, I never had a word of conversation with someone named Aaron. There was an Aaron, I never had a class with him. One time he walked by me in a cafeteria. That was them trying to make a fake exception of me knowing him. I didn't have a word of conversation with him. And in other words, there's an Aaron Mate who looks a lot like a Joe DeMoro, who's one of the ones before and after the World Trade Center attack, who made relative confessions and recorded collusion /S with Connecticut's courts, the judicial branch officers, conjunctions to that and to that, with the people involved. Also, Mendez police at the Wethersfield Police Department, they put me in fake conversation with them with one of the Mendez police. They're involved with people named DeMoro, and a Phil Collusion was with Whiting Forensics involved with that. Ron Adams is lying about his motivations, where he pretends to have humor legitimately. He has rules with family members and intimate ties and other natures of conjunctions to Wethersfield police and chiefs retired and detectives, like a Detective Dillon, is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with various natures of organized crimes. I never had a word of conversation with him. He non-verbally confirmed this. It's recorded, including former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, confirmed roles with confessions of communicated by better than just verbal and nonverbal, by a Thaddeus Grabowski, with people next to Fox Connecticut News involved with remote uses of changing and faking and hiding digital evidences as collusions with use /S of names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch names, intelligence tied to them, their family members, the news at the same time, the sources, names next to all natures of crime scenes and relative body dumping spots, and the World Trade Center attack at the same time, and the court next to it too. It's just an example, interstates, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the interbranch are locked into self-valuing sequence shifts for a method that keeps them incapable of speaking about the future in the future, about the past legitimately, and having to self-value this having been, which is relative to where and to how. James Madison's communications, things that, where his plan is the only correct answer, that's still being and haven't been replaced. And all this time they keep having like sexually themed in the news and disputes about types of rights, specifically because they have collusion. They don't even speak about the sexual harassments of little kids that people like with the Slahy family have involvements with a Harris family too. A Rick Cianfaglione has roles at campuses that he didn't even go to. I went to. Like I went to a grammar school. I went to a school that was on Valley Crest Street in Wethersfield, Connecticut, that has roles increasingly with people involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, with the family members of judges and prosecutors, and people are conjunctive to them through Route 3 and conjunctions to that and to that, which is the state judicial branch offices. A Joe DeMauro said it has recorded capacity demonstrate confirmed he has and has had federal evidences crimes and organized crimes of various natures, and with child abusers, leaders of kids years apart, first force, and more than is now involved, has something to do with his roles also with the same house, with medical and sexual offenders of little kids and overt criminal enterprises, and roles with falsified police reports, and police that pretend to me being at the Wethersfield police station and having a conversation when I was a kid. Wasn't at all. And as an adult, wasn't at all. They tried to make a fake exception to make it look like there was I didn't have any consciously. And I know he didn't even ask me any questions. When I was arrested from an algebra class, I was in grammar and high school, and there were 3 other people in that class, and they're increasingly tied to senators, Congressman Larson. Please, in other words, please get there's a whole bunch of people on 2 Route Highway, Hangdog Lane, conjunctions to that and to that, have roles with the countries in the news of Judge Napolitano, and roles at and next to the campuses with predicate acts and with predicate acts methods recorded, motivated by their collusions with town lines uses too, intercities, intra-cities through time. So in other words, they're not legitimately with the right to lie, with their uses of the right to lie on a mass scale. But to discern this, we have to discern how they've been collusions, including with the state corrections offices, with foreign and domestic military associated with Ray Collo, a Joe DeMauro, per people involved with further child abusers, leaders of kids, with the campuses that confess them involved further, and with the Lance Cuddy. I never had a word of conversation, but I never saw the Lance Cuddy inside of a campus in my life. He has collusions with people with a Daryl Sullivan too, with Alina's Pizza on Park Street, involved with foreign and domestic intelligence, and people directly and indirectly involved with a lawyer, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, people involved with Social Security and with all the Medicaid, medical, all the other programs with the Social Security people next to Fox Connecticut News, for example. They have roles with intelligence families along Main Street, along roads and routes. The way the breaching method used and uses all location/S. The same one that had slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. And our founders directed to communicate about that to us. They had declassified it for us. 2, about why and how nobody had free speech and everyone had to pretend other. Otherwise, that body was sensed and it was adapted to by the breaching method. So Ron Adams is increasingly collusion with child abusers, leaders of kids, with police departments and police names he brought up, and switching names. Interbranch in the British Superior Court has their Facebook page involved with rape threats and with a principal child abuser and with multiple fire departments and people on Covington Street and the other sides of Central Connecticut State University. Collusion /S increasingly with the Burstein family, with people with the World Trade Center attack tied to them. I don't know if they were ever at the World Trade Center, but there were others with the name tomorrow involved with the World Trade Center, and people that know my name with the state judicial branch offices who have identity theft, fraud, slanders, and sequence shifts roles, and fake passions and emotions, in other words, and motivations for it. These are also some Black KKK Latino themed. An O'Brien family and a Collusion family have roles with multiple police departments and with other intelligence families that used to live here, like the O'Brien family. And they have roles with, not just themselves, and with untimely deaths years apart. So they have roles all along Route 3 too. Collusions with unmarked police forms, and they have their roles with the departments of the campuses, individually grouped and together, self-value collusion /S with criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality /qualities, aspects /aspects, and nature /hyper nature, so to speak. There is that distinct identity of simultaneous nature that is not our species body, is not the other species body. And we are distinct, but it is all things anyway. And we are distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous with them, but per this further distinct identity of value progression, that English and that ancient pantheism is more probably and demonstrably having been revealed to teach. And so we can be led by it. For example, how it is functional, being hyper-invisible, but still discernible distinctly from where and how it is invisible, but still discernible. And the difference of that, it is manifest that way too, 3 ways equally increasingly of value. So we could observe this, and as the ancients did, its identity to the extent we could discern, like with the other species bodies in our own. It comes with means to correlation /hypercorrelation. And the name of a god is about the invisible but still discernible, /hyper-invisible but still discernible. But a name is about the invisible but still discernible. And this is how the ancients more probably and demonstrably used to teach this and appreciate it as directed by nature too, for us too. Nature itself and our founders left declassified for us what, why, and how not to leave self-value collusion /S, right? Where no one self-values it, but you have self-value collusions when you pretend, even when you pretend your motivations for why you pretend that you can't discern. Why, how anyone, even with Black people's whites of eyes, they could discern the syntax of research regarding Black and white. It's still criminally foreign influence /hyper-criminally foreign influence. Tactical delusions wrought with white voicing, with the difference of it too, because nature shows us. Boolean logic comes also with difference /hyper difference, a third distinct identity of hyper-invisible but still discernible. So, for example, the body of forever nature that is generating all things, temporary /lasting, to make more of its identity relationship to itself. And note how the other species bodies don't have criminal foreign influences, let alone self-valued criminal foreign influences, having been since before religious messengers. This breaching method had the people operating in the names of countries starting to make confessions to it relative to where and to how it got people to blame other things, others, ourselves for things that it caused. And then it knew it would have to hide that too. And so it developed a method to keep from being discerned. For example, how nature itself is showing us. One of the things all those crazy laws were about with colonization, it was also about the difference of that or of the overt criminal enterprises or of the terrorists or of the, hyper additionally, the state judicial branch officers, corrections officers, and or their colonial equivalent. There's a hyper-colonial involved. That country's A through Z, since before modern religious messengers were born. What motivated roles with it before the other known discernible? And through that and with it is something that no one wanted. Excuse me, and no one wants it increasingly. But know how you want it when you guys pretend. As people who jump in to pretend what everyone doesn't want them to do. That they can't discern how someone could just use how we have what nature itself projects to us to show that and what our founders said, we have this replaced though. At campuses A through Z, while they're speaking about pretending things are debatable, like the sexual themed types of rights, all they're doing is measuring and maintaining, and the counters to it. Sustained. All they're doing is measuring and maintaining. No one's even paying attention. They have replaced what our founders communicated to have communicated for themselves. They declassified why and how not to use everyone's words at the time, pretending that the breaching method didn't force everyone to pretend they had free speech to an extent. Otherwise, sense anyone really trying to have free speech, not as collusion /s. And it knew that nature would demonstrate that. And it showed them. Every time they go have a case before them at courts, they have audacity to be speaking about dress and things like that. Wow. Have you seen the people stacking in rap videos? In other words, while the suburbs don't discern that, leaving out how the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born for a torture, extortion, fact-cheating nature, slavery method that was entrenched. Unity comes by addressing that, honestly, not as fake sides, collusions, or incensing for the hyper-foreign. Other things others ourselves blame until that was real so they could get away with it. And the breaching method has to keep showing them how they have to value that. Because you guys have self-value roles that could be healed, replacing what James Madison communicated, with the founders behind him, plural, communicated. They didn't have this. They didn't have the security to have their names discerned, even after they were no longer around. There was a sick breaching method that had already been sustained. And all were only allowed roles with it. That means every human difference that was hurt by the breaching method, it was also hurt through other people that wanted nothing to do with it, but only had a role. That's just kinds of things we're supposed to bring up relative to the concept of Uncle Tom, for example. Harriet Beecher Stowe's Mark Twain House is right not far from the state capitol, which is increasingly people from Wethersfield have collusions with the state capitol. Everyone's repeating fake things through others. They're putting fake ties, fake natures of ties between people at each age and nature of campus, including ones that people don't even know each other. They're pretending other, and they do little magic tricks to get through it, get away with it. All ages and natures of investigators, they are kept only capable of having been self-valued, and valuing having everyone else having been self-valued. Uses of all natures and ages of investigators. magic tricks in there. Relative to and as collusion / us, where this breaching method uses names on all sides of K, it uses the difference of guilt, collusions with itself. Relative to its method of keeping other things, others, or selves blamed right where itself is a scientific value. That is inseparable from any proper science syntax, fact treatments. In other words, like James Madison's plan is the only correct answer for things like important questions like what caused the Declaration of Independence. James Madison's plan, that's the only correct answer. People will say, oh, no, it was to pull off the yokes of of being ruled by autocrators, autocrats, etc., kings. Meanwhile, they don't even address how slavery was north and south entrenched, and there were more than one country involved. International companies with themselves, from their own country, they didn't get along with each other. Pay attention to what was manifest since before religious messengers were born, not sciences. I'm not saying one of the reasons we need forgiveness is because people pretending that every time people speak about wrongs and things, that they're speaking about guilt, specifically to keep the breaching method's roles with the guilt left out. Distinctly, the North and South had roles with guilt, with slavery, and then America's founders were born. People had already been hurting each other. They're supposed to make a unity through this. It was against the laws, not just of the internationally monitored conversations to make sure everyone's the extent of collusion / us against themselves and others syntactically, therefore physically. Oh, but look, you guys had the agreement. They can't afford to get onto paper legitimately. So my name is Anthony Wall. I'm one of the people who was next to the World Trade Center towers the morning of the World Trade Center attack. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, interstates with people from Washington, D.C., and people from Connecticut, and interstates with the Connecticut ones involved too. Also next to the World Trade Center towers, and a court next to it. They have collusions with the names involved in their extended family members. Further, with the principal child abuser and whiting forensics, changing, faking, hiding, obfuscating, digital evidences, forensic evidences, as collusion / us with all natures of crime scenes. In other words, the courts have collusions also with delusions relative. Retired and standing, too. The difference of their guilt as retired or standing is also being and having been employed by the breaching method that measures and maintains. Everyone defenses of uses of difference / us of all natures of difference, not just humanity's difference from other species bodies of individual bodies. Again, we are shown this hyper difference. How it is functional, being hyper invisible, but still discernible identity of relationship to itself, as all things, well, not them, but anyway. And as only increasing value here or as it forced from here. And the only reason everyone has self-eyed roles, like replacing what's hyper-evidential and what's correlation / hyper-correlation regarding the evaluation of evidence or the appreciation of the evaluation of evidence proper. It is not. You guys are forcing subject, you guys are forcing things before courts that are still collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and with the lawyers, the sources, the intelligence, all at the same time. They have been put in the same sequence, shit in with the news to prevent voices, unless people then they say, oh, well, I'm just jumping into the conversation. You're not supposed to jump into conversations about the World Trade Center attack, changing, faking, and hiding people's short words. Oh, well, I didn't understand that. Hiding your motivations. Your motivations are being orchestrated by the breaching method. You guys have Wethersfield police involved with Saudi Arabia. Increasingly intercities before the World Trade Center attack in it. Inter and intra campuses. Rick Cianfaglione, I don't even think he went to that campus I went. only 1 year when I was in kindergarten in Wethersfield. I began the year as 4 years old. In other words, and I didn't see a Joe DeMoro there, but there's a Kevin Harris and his mother and family and people involved with him reportedly intimately tied to a daughter of a principal, Mr. Murphy, who I barely know. I only had good interactions with him. Even though they tried to put fake things. 2 times I had to go to the office. They put fake things to do that. But he was nice and there was no problem with it. But his daughter is involved with people with medical offenders with a whole bunch of different countries. People involved with Korea, a Mike Violet, too. People that didn't even go to my grammar school, I don't think. They increasingly have collusion /S with people that weren't from my grammar school that I didn't have classes with that have been sticking things in databases. Then years later, when people try to speak about the past honestly, properly, they jump in. That's how they get away with it. They also recorded themselves, the agencies, with criminally foreign influence, tactics, delusions, raw readings of statutes and precedents regarding the validity of what's typed online or what actually was. They're changing and faking digital evidences. Wethersfield police have people all along Route 175 involved with the Wethersfield Police Facebook page, with a Joshua Schumack and his mother, involved with a Mark Violet. And I never saw Joshua Schumack on my street in my life. I never had a class with him. He has been planting evidences with foreign and domestic intelligence and people involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids at religious spots and at campuses and with names next to them. And these are people, in other words, these are people with the police and the courts that have been attaching me to fake conversations with themselves and changed since I was a kid, faked and changed natures of ties and fake ties to people since I was a kid. A Joshua Julian is also one of the ones involved with New Britain Superior Court and Wethersfield Police and fire departments and medical offenders and sexual offenders of kids. With people in my area also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed him involved with them also with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. These are not legitimate roles. With the car dealerships too that the foreign and domestic have, with the names involved and their neighbors. I don't even know all their names. Increasingly, a former Mayor Gold has people with the name all along, like all along Route 3 conjunctions into that, like Hangdog Lane where it runs into 2-hour highway. A bunch of people tied to these other countries and the family members, especially concentrated involvements that could be observed between the probate courts roles with guilt, the superior courts, and the probate courts with the same house /S, increasingly with the families and intimate ties and locations and names associated with them, associated with retired police chiefs from Wethersfield. A police chief Centron is a bunch of people at the corner of Elm Street and Route 3 in Rocky Hill and in Wethersfield, involved through time with the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices, with Wethersfield police with wire crime acts and methods. Wethersfield Pizza House has a Steven Stocco, has also been putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with Wethersfield police that are refusing to get on paper with him and his wife and their neighbors and other conjunctions to them have roles. There's a Brian Bonin. I only saw him one time in my life. Sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has roles with federal evidences, crimes, and crime methods with people with the state judicial branch offices, conjunctions to that and to that, like all along Route 3. They also have roles with the people with the FBI, with I didn't say that to him. I don't know. Barely know him. Ray Claw too has syntax with them with that on between social media, with the Joshua Julian involved with the Facebook page of a principal child abuser. Now they've been changing, faking, hiding what's actually the value of what's typed on social media and they've been lying about their motivations. And all this would be healed if you guys would follow mandated law. Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah.